You're about to lose custody anyway, my mother said, and 36 people at the funeral repast stopped chewing. She said it at Romano's banquet hall in Paramus, New Jersey, 2 hours after my grandmother was buried, while my 4-year-old son was coloring on the back of a prayer card beside me. What she meant was that she and my father had already fed Child Protective Services a lie, then used that open case to push my ex into taking me back to court so they could get control of the $224,000 my grandmother had left in trust for my son. Then a woman I had never met walked into a conference room in Bergen County and read one sentence aloud, and my mother's lawyer closed his folder. My name is Brooke Ellison Mercer. I am 24 years old. Now let me take you back to Paramus, New Jersey, on Saturday, October 14th, 2023. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. My grandmother, Eleanor Mercer, had been dead for 5 days when we gathered in the back room at Romano's. The room smelled like steam table gravy, burnt coffee, and those white funeral lilies that always start sweet and then turn sharp around the edges. There were aluminum trays of baked ziti and chicken francese under silver lids, condensation beating down the sides. Somebody's toddler was tapping a fork against a water glass 2 tables over. My son, Noah, sat to my left with a green crayon in his fist and one Velcro sneaker half open because he had been fighting me about shoes since 7 that morning. I remember exactly what my mother was wearing because I replayed that moment so many times later. Navy knit dress, thin gold chain, pearl earrings she only wore when she wanted to look gentle. Her lipstick had worn off in the center, and there was a faint stain of coffee on the rim of her styrofoam cup. My father, Daniel Mercer, was next to her in his charcoal suit, hands folded over his stomach like he was listening to church announcements. She looked at me over a paper plate with half a dinner roll on it and said very calmly, "You're about to lose custody anyway. I think everyone should prepare themselves for what comes next." The room went quiet, not movie quiet, real quiet, forks lowered, chairs shifting against tile. 36 relatives and family friends going still all at once. My Aunt Denise put her hand flat on the tablecloth. My cousin Rachel inhaled so sharply I heard it from 2 seats down. Noah kept coloring, because children do not know when adults have just stepped off a cliff. I said, "That is not true." My mother gave me the look she had used my whole life when she wanted to make me feel 12. Not angry. Worse. Patient. Reasonable. Already believed. "It is under review," she said. "Please do not create a scene at your grandmother's repast. I did not throw my plate. I did not scream. Instead, I picked up Noah's cup before he knocked it over, wiped a line of apple juice off the table with my napkin, and memorized every face in that room. That was the first thing I learned. If people are going to lie about you, let them do it in a room with witnesses." At that point, the investigation had been open for 12 days. I knew because the first Child Protective Services worker had left me a voicemail on Monday, October 2nd, at 8:14 in the morning while I was parking outside Little Pines Learning Center in Fairlawn, where Noah went 3 mornings a week. I still have that voicemail saved in a folder on an old phone I no longer use. Her name was Tasha Brennan, and her message was direct but not unkind. She said there had been a report regarding inadequate supervision, possible prescription pill misuse, and what she called instability in the home. She said she needed to see Noah in person and speak with me that day. I remember listening to it twice with the engine still running and the heater clicking like it does when the fan is about to go. My coffee had leaked from the lid and burned the side of my hand, and I did not even notice until later. There is a kind of fear that makes your body loud. Not the crying kind, the counting kind. What did they say? Who said it? How fast can I get my paperwork together? By noon that day, I knew exactly who had done it, not because Tasha told me she did not. She was careful. But the report mentioned details only 2 people would know. The exact wording my mother had used 2 weeks earlier when she criticized the orange child lock on my medicine cabinet. The date of Noah's ear infection in August. The sentence, "Maternal family has concerns, the child is often left with screens and sedated with melatonin." That word sedated was pure her. She said ordinary things in courtroom language because she thought it made her sound serious. The truth was very plain. I worked front desk and billing at a dental practice in Ridgewood. I lived in a two-bedroom rental on Maple Avenue in Fair Lawn. Noah slept in a room with dinosaur sheets and a battery-operated star projector that made a clicking sound every 40 seconds. He had one prescription, an inhaler for seasonal wheezing. He had a pediatrician, Dr. Nadia Solis, who had seen him 11 times since birth. He had perfect attendance at preschool except for one stomach bug in March and the ear infection in August. He was loved, he was fed, he was clean, he was safe. He was also, very unfortunately, the grandson of my parents. If you have ever had that moment where your whole life narrows into a legal pad and a charging cable and 3 open tabs on your phone, then you already know the feeling. You are not panicking because panic is too expensive. You're organizing. Stay with me because what they had really wanted was not just my son, it was the money attached to him. My grandmother Eleanor had updated her will in June of 2023, 4 months before she died. I found that out on September 21st, the Thursday after she passed, when my Uncle Martin called and asked if I could meet him at Pollock and Weissman on Main Street in Hackensack. The office smelled like toner, lemon furniture polish, and old carpeting that had been shampooed too many times. The attorney, Glenn Pollock, slid a copy of the trust summary across the table and explained that my grandmother had set aside $224,000 from the sale of her Teaneck house for Noah's education, housing, and medical needs. Not for me, not for my parents, for Noah. There was one more detail. My grandmother had named me as the person in charge of decisions until Noah turned 25, with an outside trustee, Valley Heritage Trust Services, handling the actual money releases. She had not named my parents in any controlling role at all. When Glenn said that, my father leaned back in his chair and tapped his wedding ring against the table 3 times. My mother smiled without showing teeth and said, "I am surprised Eleanor would burden Brooke with something this structured." Glenn looked at her over his glasses and said, "Those were your mother's instructions." That was on a Thursday at 11:20 in the morning. By Sunday evening, my mother had called me 4 times, texted 11 times, and left 2 voicemails trying to present herself as helpful. "You're young," she said in the first voicemail. "These things are often mishandled. Your father and I can oversee the administrative side." In the second one, her tone had changed. "It would be irresponsible to leave a child-centered trust in the hands of someone with your history of instability." My history of instability turned out to mean one panic attack in a Target parking lot in February after Noah's father missed another pickup and I had to put back half my groceries. She knew about that because I had called her from my car, stupidly thinking mothers were for that. Noah's father is named Evan Russo. We were together from 19 to 22, never married, and by the fall of 2023 we had been broken up for almost 2 years. He lived in Clifton with his girlfriend and worked in commercial HVAC. We had a basic custody arrangement done through family court in Passaic County when Noah was 2. Noah stayed with me most of the week and with Evan every other weekend, plus dinner on Wednesdays. It was not elegant, but it functioned until my parents got to him. The first sign was a text on Wednesday, October 4th, at 6:43 in the evening while I was standing over the stove making boxed macaroni, because Noah would only eat the orange kind that month. Evan wrote, "We need to talk about whether your house is a safe place right now." I turned the burner down and read it again. The apartment smelled like butter and laundry detergent because I had just dried Noah's blankets. The box slipped in my hand when I poured the noodles. I wrote back, "What are you talking about?" He responded, "12 minutes later, your parents called. They said there is an open investigation and they are worried. I am not ignoring this." I did not call him angry. I called him careful. "That mattered later," I said. "There is an investigation because someone made a false report. Noah is safe. If you want to discuss his pediatric records, school records, my home, any of it, I will send everything tonight." He was quiet for 4 seconds, I counted. Then he said, "Brooke, I have to think about Noah first." "Then think with facts," I said. "Not with my parents." He exhaled into the phone. I could hear a football game in the background and his girlfriend talking to someone in the kitchen. "My lawyer says if there is an active case, I should ask for temporary changes." My lawyer. That phrase, "men love borrowing certainty from other men." I said, "Do what you need to do. I am documenting all of this." He laughed once, short and embarrassed. Why do you always say stuff like that? Because I know my parents, I said, and hung up. 3 days later, on Saturday morning, October 7th, Tasha Brennan came to my apartment. She wore a gray county badge on a lanyard, flat black shoes, and had a canvas tote bag with 2 folders in it. She looked younger than I expected, late 30s maybe, no wedding ring. Her hair was twisted into a clip like she had done it in the car. She smelled faintly of rain and peppermint gum. She was not warm, but she was not cruel either. She asked to see where Noah slept. She asked where I kept medication. She asked how often he was left alone. She asked whether I used marijuana, prescription sedatives, alcohol to excess, corporal punishment, plain questions. I gave plain answers. Noah showed her his toy ambulance and told her his favorite color was green, but the dark green, not the baby one. She smiled at that despite herself. After 35 minutes, she sat at my kitchen table while I brought her documents in 3 stacks. Daycare attendance, Noah's well visit records, prescription printouts from CVS on Broadway, screenshots of messages from my mother asking for details about his doctor, his preschool hours, and whether I still kept sleep aids in the bathroom cabinet. I had highlighted that one. Tasha turned 2 pages, then looked up. You keep records? Yes, I said. Why? Because my mother had been rewriting me in rooms since I was 14. Because if I showed up with feelings, I sounded unstable. And if I showed up with timestamps, I sounded sane. Because the first time someone lies about you should not be the first time you start a folder. I said because I was raised by people who do not say things unless they think they can get away with them. She held my gaze for 1 second longer than before and made a note. That afternoon I bought a blue accordion file from Staples on Route 4, $21.99 before tax. I labeled the tabs in black marker CPS. Evan daycare, medical, my parents, voicemails, witnesses. I was not being dramatic. I was building a spine. The funeral repast happened a week later, and after my mother made her little announcement, the room never fully recovered. People tried. They lifted lids, served cannoli, poured coffee, asked who wanted leftovers packed up, but conversation broke in the middle. Faces kept turning back toward me and then away. Aunt Denise found me in the hallway outside the restrooms near the coat rack, where the air smelled like old bleach and floral air freshener. She was my father's sister, 62, retired school secretary, and one of those women who never wore comfortable shoes even when standing for 6 hours. She lowered her voice and said, "Your mother should not have said that." "Did you know?" I asked. She looked at the carpet. Brown swirls, one burn mark near the baseboard. I knew they had made calls. "What calls, Denise?" "To Evan, to someone at the county. Your father asked me for Noah's preschool address last month. He said he was sending a sympathy basket after Eleanor got worse. I gave it to him." That is how betrayal often arrives. Not as a mastermind, as a woman in sensible lipstick realizing she carried one brick. I nodded once. "Thank you for telling me." She touched my sleeve. "Brooke, your grandmother changed those papers because she knew how they were. She told me in August in her den, with that little fan rattling in the window. She said, if I leave control to Judith, the money will be gone before Noah needs braces." I stood there with my coat over one arm and felt something cold settle into place. Not grief, not even rage, direction. Now let me take you back to Monday, October 16th, 2023, at 9:12 in the morning. I was at my desk at Ridgewood Dental Arts answering an insurance call about a crown denial when my phone buzzed with an email from Evan's attorney. Subject line: proposed temporary changes regarding minor child. Again, plain language, again, paper. The body of the email said they wanted Noah to stay with Evan full-time until concerns about the mother's home environment are resolved. There was also a sentence that made me stop breathing for a second. Maternal grandparents are prepared to assist with safe caregiving and transportation. There it was, the handoff, the real plan. I printed the email before I responded. I wrote the time in the top right corner in pen. 9:14 a.m. Monday. Then I forwarded it to myself, to my personal Gmail, and to a new account I created just for this mess. Brooke Evidence 1023. Petty, maybe, useful, absolutely. My boss, Dr. Lena Eschew, came out of Operatory 3 with her mask hanging around her neck and asked if the insurance company had finally approved Mrs. Donnelly's implant. I must have looked strange because she stopped and said, "What happened?" I told her the shortest version. "My parents made a false report about my son. My ex is trying to use it. I may need copies of my schedule and payroll records." Dr. Ishu did not ask if I was sure. She did not say parents mean well. She said, "Tell me exactly what dates you need. People show you who they are in 10 seconds when the floor drops." By lunch, I had pay stubs proving I had worked every shift I claimed, sign-in sheets from Little Pines, and a letter from Dr. Hishu confirming that Noah had never once been left unattended at the office, because he only came there twice in emergencies and sat at the break room table with crackers and coloring books until I finished. Her office manager stamped it and dated it. October 16th, 2023. That evening, I met with a lawyer friend of Dr. Hishu's, not to start a big legal war, just to understand the shape of what was happening. Her name was Marisol Vega. She practiced family law in Montclair, charged me nothing for 40 minutes, and drank terrible office Keurig coffee from a paper cup while I spread my file across her desk. Marisol's office smelled like dust, espresso, and the faint hot plastic scent of an overworked printer. She read in silence for a full 3 minutes, then tapped the 2 pages labeled concern summary that Evan's side had attached. "These statements are too polished," she said. "What does that mean?" "It means ordinary people describing ordinary concern do not say things like pattern of pharmaceutical sedation unless someone has coached them. Also, this so-called neighbor note has your apartment number wrong." I looked down. She was right. It said 2C. I lived in 2G. I had looked at that paper twice and missed it because I was still inside the insult of it. Marisol circled the line with a black pen. "Do not argue with your parents directly. Do not send paragraphs. Do not defend yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Build chronology, build sources, build contradictions." I said, "Can I prove they did it?" She took a breath. "Maybe. False reports are hard because people hide behind concern. But if they forged supporting statements or manipulated your ex with fabricated records, that is different. Start with who touched what." That sentence stayed with me. Who touched what? So I made a grid. I wish I were exaggerating. I went home after Noah was asleep, sat at my kitchen table under the bad overhead light that buzzed every few minutes, and drew 6 columns on legal paper. Date, event, person involved, document or call, contradiction, witness. It was 11:31 p.m. on a Monday. The sink still held Noah's dinosaur plate from dinner. My lower back hurt. I kept going until 1:13 in the morning. October 2nd, CPS voicemail. Source likely maternal family. Contradiction report says frequent school absences. Daycare attendance shows none. Witness Tasha Brennan, October 4th. Evan text about safety concerns. Source, parents call. Contradiction, he had no prior issue. Witness phone records, October 14th. Funeral repast statement in front of 36 people. Source, mother admits outcome before review complete. Contradiction, she should not know anything official. Witnesses list attached. I had been keeping that folder for 12 days. It already weighed more than my hope. If you have ever been called dramatic for writing things down, please hear me when I say this. They call it drama until the pages save you. Then they call it evidence, and right before the next part, if this story is hitting something familiar in you, take a second to subscribe. Stories like this are why channels like this matter. Women have been told to let it go for generations. I do not believe in that anymore. 3 weeks later, on Tuesday, November 7th, at 4:20 in the afternoon, the second county worker entered the story. Her name was Celia Martins, and she was Tasha Brennan's supervisor. I know this because Tasha called and said, "My supervisor would like to review some of the written material in person." Her voice had changed, slightly, not friendly, interested. Celia met me in a smaller room at the county office in Hackensack, with frosted glass on the door and one fake ficus in the corner collecting dust. The place smelled like copier toner and microwaved soup. She wore a camel coat over scrubs, which told me she'd come from somewhere else in a hurry, and she set 2 documents in front of me without letting me touch them first. "Do you know these names?" she asked. The first was a statement from a neighbor named Patricia Lohman in apartment 3B, claiming she had heard Noah crying for hours and had witnessed me slurring words in the hallway. The second was from Robert Kelsey, who said he saw me leave Noah alone in my car outside ShopRite on September 29th. I stared at the pages. Apartment 3B in my building belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Krawick, both in their 70s, who had lived there 11 years and smelled permanently of onions and Tide. There was no Patricia Lohman. There had never been one. And on September 29th, I had not gone to ShopRite. Noah and I were at Pediatric Associates in Glen Rock at 3:10 p.m. because he had a rash on the back of his knees from detergent. I looked up at Celia and said very carefully, "Those people do not exist in my life." She nodded once. "That is what I'm trying to determine." Then she did something small that changed everything. She turned the first page 90 degrees and pointed to one word in the second paragraph. "Notice this misspelling." The word concerns was typed as concerns with an extra E. Then she pointed to the second letter, same typo, same line spacing, same weirdly formal sentence rhythm. "The child appears to display avoidant attachment behaviors. Nobody in my building talks like that. Half my building barely says hello," I said. "My father misspells that word." She gave me a look that revealed nothing. "Can you support that?" Yes, I could. Because 3 years earlier, when my father was on the zoning board in Teaneck, he had emailed me a forwarded neighborhood petition and written, "I share your concerns about parking." He had spelled it that way in 2 texts and 1 Christmas card note over the years, a ridiculous little fingerprint, an extra E where it did not belong. I did not smile. I did not lean in. I opened my accordion folder, pulled out a printout of the old email thread I had kept because it included our argument about Noah's car seat, and slid it across the table. Celia read the line. Her face did not change. She asked, "Do you have the full header on this email?" "I can print it tonight." "Please do." Then she asked for one more thing. "You mentioned voicemails from your mother regarding the trust and caregiving. Bring those in, all of them." So I did. That night I sat on my bedroom floor after Noah fell asleep because the Wi-Fi was better near the router. And I exported 19 voicemails, 27 screenshots, and one 6-minute phone recording from September 24th, in which my mother said, "Your grandmother was not in a condition to appreciate the administrative risk of naming you." She did not know I had been recording because in New Jersey only one person on the call has to know. I did. At 11:56 p.m. I labeled every file with date first, then content. 2023-09-24 Mom voicemail, trust risk. 2023-10-01 Dad text school address. 2023-10-04 Ivan text safe place. 2023-10-14 funeral repast witness list. I was not trying to feel powerful. I was trying not to drown. On Thursday, November 9th, I brought a flash drive to the county office in a plain white envelope and wrote my full name on the front in blue ink. Celia took it, thanked me, and said, "You may hear less from us for a little while." That sentence would terrify most people. It calmed me. Silence is different when the lie is under strain. My parents, of course, interpreted it differently. They got bolder. My mother called on Sunday, November 12th, at 8:03 p.m. while I was clipping Noah's fingernails after his bath. I let it ring to voicemail. "Brooke," she said, in that smooth recital voice she used when she wanted to sound maternal for an audience she imagined in her head. "If you cooperate, this can be resolved with dignity. You are making choices that will have consequences for Noah." I saved it, my father texted Tuesday morning at 7:21. "Need the name of Noah's current pharmacist for updated family records." I took a screenshot. Then Aunt Denise called me from the Acme parking lot in Glen Rock while her turn signal clicked in the background. "I need to tell you something before I lose my nerve," she said. This is the part where somebody who stayed silent decides whether they can live with themselves. She told me that on September 30th, 2 days before the county called me, my parents had been at her kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, drafting what my father called supporting statements. Denise had thought they were writing letters for church because my mother mentioned a concern for Noah's routine. Then my father asked whether the third-floor woman in my building was Patricia or Pamela. Denise said, "I told him I did not know because I do not live there, Brooke." I closed my eyes. Noah was in the next room watching Bluey too loud. I could smell the chicken nuggets he had refused to finish. "Will you say that again to someone official?" I asked. She did not answer for 2 seconds. Then she said, "Yes." That one yes was worth more than half the prayers at my grandmother's funeral. Now let me take you back to Friday, December 1st, 2023, at 10:10 in the morning. Bergen County Family Services had set a joint review meeting because Evan was still pushing for more overnights, and the county had not formally closed the investigation yet. The meeting was in a beige conference room on the fourth floor with humming fluorescent lights and a table so polished I could see the reflection of my own hands. The room smelled like stale coffee, hand sanitizer, and wet wool from everyone's coats. There were 8 people there when I walked in. Me, Evan, his attorney, a narrow man named Peter Whelan with a red tie and the kind of face that always looks disappointed in a waitress. My mother, my father, their attorney, Susan Heller, who had pearl studs and a leather folder, Celia Martins, and another county worker I had never met, whose name card said Monica Feld. I had my blue accordion file, a spiral notebook, and a Ticonderoga pencil because pens skip when your hand shakes. I wore a black sweater dress and boots with low heels because I wanted to look like myself, just steadier. My mother did not say hello, she said. I hope for Noah's sake you are prepared to be honest today. I put my folder on the table and said, I am. That is the thing about calm. People mistake it for weakness right up until it costs them something. The meeting began the way bureaucratic meetings do, with names, roles, and that fake neutral tone meant to make everybody feel equally safe when they are not. Monica explained the process. Celia said they had reviewed additional material. Peter Whelan said Evan's concern was stability. Susan Heller said my parents' only interest was the welfare of their grandson. Then Monica asked me if I wanted to respond to the concerns raised. I said yes. Noah is healthy, enrolled, supervised, and loved. I have provided medical records, daycare attendance, payroll records, witness names, home visit access, and recorded voicemails relevant to motive. I would like all written third-party statements used against me to be verified by source before anybody says the word stability again. The room went still for maybe 2 seconds. Peter Whelan shifted in his chair. Susan Heller wrote something down. My mother folded her hands tighter. Then Celia opened a manila folder. If you have ever sat in a room knowing something is about to break and all you can do is keep your face still long enough to watch it happen, then you know exactly where I was. This is the moment people think they want to rush toward. You do not. You just want your pulse to stop kicking your throat. Keep listening, because this is where the outsider said the one sentence that changed the shape of the room. Celia did not look at me first. She looked at Monica. Then she said 2 neighbor statements submitted in support of these concerns could not be verified because the named individuals do not appear to exist, and both documents contain linguistic matches to emails previously sent by Mr. Mercer. No one moved. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Somebody in the hallway laughed too loudly and then passed by. I could hear Evan breathing through his nose. Susan Heller spoke first. I'm sorry. What exactly are you suggesting? Celia turned one page. I am not suggesting. I am stating that one of the false witness letters repeats a distinctive misspelling and phrasing pattern found in multiple emails authored by Mr. Daniel Mercer. We also spoke with Denise Kavanaugh, who described observing Mr. and Mrs. Mercer drafting support statements on September 30th. My father's lips parted, then closed. My mother said very softly, "That is not an accurate characterization." Celia did not even look at her. Additionally, voicemail recordings provided by Ms. Mercer indicate repeated attempts to pressure her to surrender control over a trust established for the minor child in the amount of $224,000. That number changed the air. Money does that. It makes people stop pretending this is all about emotion. Evan turned toward my parents so fast his chair squeaked on the floor. Peter Whelan sat back and removed his glasses. Monica asked, Mrs. Mercer? Mr. Mercer, do you want to respond to the finding that fabricated third-party statements were submitted in a child welfare matter connected to a custody dispute, and my mother, who had spoken over me my entire life, managed one broken sentence? There were concerns. That was it. Not a speech, not tears, just 4 words with no place left to stand. I did not smile. I did not thank anyone. I wrote down the exact time on my notebook, 10:37 a.m. Then Monica said something that I have replayed in my head almost as often as my mother's quote at the repast. Based on what we have now, the allegations against Miss Mercer are not supported. The case will be closed, and the fabricated supporting documents will be referred for internal fraud review. Referred, internal fraud review, plain room, plain words, real consequence starting to move. Peter Whelan cleared his throat and said Evan would like a moment. He and Evan stepped into the hallway. Through the frosted glass, I could see only shapes, but I could tell Evan was pacing because his shadow kept crossing the same strip of light. Inside the room, no one spoke. My father stared at the table. My mother looked at Celia as if eye contact alone could restore her authority. Susan Heller closed her leather folder. That quiet was not victory exactly. It was exposure. When Evan came back in, he did not sit next to my parents again. He sat one chair farther away. He said, not looking at me, "I am withdrawing the temporary request." Monica nodded and wrote it down. I watched my mother hear the sound of her own failure entering the record. After the meeting ended, Celia handed me a printed summary and said a closure letter would follow by mail. She did not smile. Professionals like her do not give you closure in their face. They give it to you in documentation. That is more useful. In the hallway, near a water cooler that hummed louder than it should have, Susan Heller caught up to my parents and said in a low voice that still carried, "You need to stop contacting her directly today." My father said, "This is being blown out of proportion." Susan replied, "No, it is not. I wish I could tell you that was the moment I felt healed. It was not. I felt tired, bone tired, like my blood had been running errands for months." But we were not done yet, because my grandmother's trust still had one more test in front of it, and my parents had one more price to pay. The closure letter arrived on Thursday, December 7th, in a county envelope with my name typed slightly crooked. I opened it at my kitchen table at 7:18 p.m. while Noah ate fish sticks and ketchup in the next room. The letter said the allegations were unsubstantiated and noted false collateral documentation. I read that line 3 times. Then I made copies. One for me, one for Marisol, one for Valley Heritage Trust Services. Because the money had always been part of it, and I knew my parents would try to circle back through another door if I left one unlocked. On Monday, December 11th at 2:40 in the afternoon, I met by phone with a trust officer named Rebecca Lynn from Valley Heritage. Her office was in Morristown, but her voice sounded like every competent woman who has ever saved another woman's life by simply believing paperwork. Crisp, fast, no nonsense. I told her the trust had become a point of pressure in a family conflict involving a false child welfare report. I emailed the county closure letter, the voicemail transcript, and the meeting summary while we were on the call. Rebecca read for less than a minute and said, "I am placing a note in the file that no contact from your parents is to be treated as advisory or authorized. Any attempt to influence distributions or custodial authority will be documented." Then she added, "Your grandmother was very clear in our July meeting. She anticipated interference." I sat there with the phone against my ear and my free hand flat on the table. "She said that," she said, and I quote, "My daughter believes anything near a child belongs to her." I laughed once and then, to my embarrassment, cried for about 6 seconds quietly. The kind of crying that sounds like a hiccup you're trying to hide from your own kid. My grandmother had not saved me from the attack, but she had seen it coming. There is a strange comfort in being accurately loved. The concrete price landed in January. Not all at once. That is not how these things usually work. Institutions move like cold syrup, but they do move. On Wednesday, January 10th, 2024, Aunt Denise called me from her kitchen in Wyckoff while her dishwasher ran in the background. She said my father had been asked to resign from the volunteer zoning advisory seat he still held informally in Teaneck because the borough administrator did not want someone linked to fabricated witness statements representing public trust matters. He did not go quietly, according to Denise. He said people were being vindictive. 2 days later, on Friday, January 12th, Susan Heller sent me a short letter by email and certified mail. It said she no longer represented my parents in any matter involving Noah and that they had been instructed not to contact my daycare, pediatrician, employer, or the trust company. It was not an apology, it was better. It was a boundary written by someone they had paid. The biggest price came on Tuesday, January 23rd at 9:30 in the morning. Bergen County sent notice that the fabricated letters and false statements had been referred for review of filing-related misconduct, and because the custody fight had been advanced using false supporting material, my parents were ordered to pay $8,460 toward my attorney costs and document recovery expenses. Marisol had formally stepped in after the December meeting to clean up the record and close every hole they might crawl through. I did not become rich from that order. I became less broke from surviving them. $8,460 is not the same as $224,000, but it is a number with weight. It is a court-attached number. It is the price of trying to turn my child into a liver. Evan also paid his own price, though in a different currency. He lost the easy moral high ground he had been borrowing from my parents. The county notes, the closure letter, and Celia's findings stayed in the custody file. He could not pretend he had merely been cautious. He had attached himself to a lie because it was convenient and sounded respectable. By March, he had stopped mentioning my parents entirely. His Wednesday dinners resumed. He texts before pickups now. He says thank you too much. Guilt has a voice. It sounds polite. My mother tried one last contact in February, a card, cream paper, no return address. Inside, she wrote, I hope one day you understand the impossible position we were placed in as grandparents. No, absolutely not. I kept the card, of course. I date stamped the envelope and slid it into the blue accordion file under my parents. Then I blocked the new number that texted me 2 days later from an unknown line saying only, families should not do this to each other. Families should not do this to each other. That sentence sat in my kitchen like bad perfume. If you have ever been handed morality by the person who harmed you, then you know how absurd that feels. They injure you and then ask you to protect them from the consequences of having done it. Do not. Let the consequence arrive. And if you have made it this far with me, subscribe if you want more stories where the truth does not need to shout to win. By spring, the practical shape of my life had changed in small, unglamorous ways. I slept with my phone on Do Not Disturb but favorites allowed. Because for 4 months every unknown number felt like danger. Noah stopped asking why Grandma Judith did not come around anymore by mid-April. Children adapt faster than adults when the room gets quieter. I switched daycare pickup authorization codes. I gave Dr. Solis's office a copy of Susan Heller's letter and told them nobody but me and Evan was to receive information. The receptionist highlighted my chart in yellow and said, done. Aunt Denise still comes by sometimes with Entenmann's crumb cake and more information than she means to share. That is how I learned my mother told people at church she was heartbroken by a misunderstanding. Denise said only 6 women nodded. Reputation does not collapse in one dramatic scene, it leaks out through side doors. Quietly, permanently. As for the trust, it is still intact. $224,000 invested and supervised exactly where my grandmother put it, with a note in the file that my parents are not authorized to guide, suggest, redirect, or interpret anything. Rebecca Lynn sent me the annual statement in July. I held the envelope for a full minute before opening it. Paper can hurt you. Paper can also keep a promise. I wish I could end this by telling you I never think about that room at Romano's anymore. The steam table lids, the burnt coffee, the sound of my son coloring while my mother told 36 people I was about to lose him. But memory does not leave because the paperwork went your way. What changed is something else. Now, when I think about that room, I also remember another one. Beige conference table, fluorescent hum. Celia Martin's reading one sentence without any dramatic music, without any kindness added to soften it, without even looking at my mother when she said fabricated. I remember my mother's voice going thin on the word concerns. I remember my father's face when someone outside the family finally described him accurately. That matters, because there are people who build their whole lives on being the narrator in every room. The decent one, the reliable one, the worried parent, the grieving daughter. My mother loved rooms like that. My father loved the paperwork under them. What they did not understand is that records are another kind of room. And in that room, they were just 2 people who made false statements, forged support, tried to weaponize a county office, and got caught. I did not forgive them. I do not plan to. I am not interested in performing healing to make anyone else comfortable. I am interested in peace, and peace is not the same thing. Peace is Noah asleep in his room with a star projector clicking every 40 seconds. Peace is a trust statement in a drawer they cannot touch. Peace is knowing that when my mother said, "You are about to lose custody anyway," she thought she was announcing the ending. She was only describing the